I think it was the very first episode of this podcast that I talked about how I don't ever really want to be super reactionary or overreact or anything like that. I don't think that I think there's a lot of that in media to begin with, and I want to be reasonable and logical. Sometimes that's not always fun. So today we're going to overreact to week 1 of the college football season. We're going to look at just what it is that went really well for teams and what went really, really poorly in the first real week of the college football season. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I want to look at the Sunday stock report. Whose stock is up and whose stock is down after 1 week of the college football season. And I think you have to start with the most impressive win in college football on Saturday. And to me, it was Notre Dame. Notre Dame going to Kyle Field and getting a win at Texas A&M is impressive. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Notre Dame's win makes them virtually a college football playoff contender. They have to lose twice now to be on the fringes even of the college football playoff, because I think Texas A&M is going to win a good amount of games. They're going to be good. They're not going to be 10-2, but they're going to be 8-4 in that neighborhood. And going on the road to start the season against an SEC opponent and getting that win, it's going to look good on Notre Dame's resume. So Notre Dame gets a big stock up. And I think Marcus Freeman gets a big stock up because you know what? He showed he's got stones in that win. Even at the end of the game where you probably thought, like, maybe conventional wisdom is don't kick the field goal. Don't send the field goal unit out. Don't attempt a field goal because if it gets blocked and returned for a touchdown, you're staring at a tie ball game. Instead, he says, I don't care. We're going out kicking a field goal and win the damn game. And you know what they did? They kicked the field goal and they won the damn game. So Marcus Freeman went out and won a big game. And there will be people who will tell you, and this happens all of the time. Maybe I'm just hypersensitive, but like Peyton Manning used to get all the time. He can't win big games. Be like, well, how the hell did he get to the AFC Championship game? Do you not think NFL playoff games are big games? Other coaches get labeled that too. Like Ryan Day is like, he can't win the big one. Well, okay, every year Michigan is a big game, right? Well, he's won against Michigan. He's won a Big Ten championship game. The conference championship game is a big game. He's coached in the national championship game. You don't get to that point without winning big games. College football playoff semifinals are big games. You just put it out of the back of your mind because they haven't won the national championship. Marcus Freeman hasn't won the national championship. Ryan Day hasn't won the national championship. You know who has that's coaching college football right now? Dabo Swinney and Mac Brown. That's the list, right? Like that is, and Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, and Mac Brown. That's the list. It does not happen frequently. It is not like other sports where they just pass the trophy around year after year after year. It's hard to win the national title. And for Marcus Freeman to go to Texas A&M with Notre Dame, show some cojones, go in there and pull out a win, he deserves a stock up. Also on the stock up today, Cam Ward from the University of Miami. Miami as a whole, because I think there were a lot of people, I've talked at length, that I think Miami's a playoff contender, not because they're good, but because their schedule sucks. And if they got past Florida, and they kicked Florida's ass yesterday, it was from start to finish a butt whooping. And Cam Ward has elevated the quarterback play at Miami after 1 week, and they are good. And Jackson Dart at Ole Miss was good too. He was spectacular. And I know that, okay, Ole Miss versus Furman, I get it. There are a lot of those yesterday. There were a lot of mismatches. But if you can look really good against those mismatches, it makes me feel better about when you're playing a real defense down the line. That I know that is in there somewhere, right? If you perform poorly against Furman, there are questions. He did not do that. He performed very, very well. Also performing very well, especially in the second half, were the Iowa Hawkeyes. They were playing without Kirk Ferentz, who was suspended for recruiting violations for 1 game. They struggled in the first half under a new offensive coordinator, under a new offense that ain't Kirk Ferentz's son. And then they put 34 on the board in the second half. It's the most points they'd scored in a couple of years. It's the most points they'd scored in a half in a couple of years. Iowa's defense is good. If their offense can be adequate, not even average, if they can be adequate, if you can score 2 touchdowns a game, we are in every game. And that is, I don't think that's a high bar to point to and say like, oh man, if they can muster 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns, they got a chance to go undefeated. It shouldn't be that way. But their defense is good. And if their offense can be borderline below average, not to the point where there are dreadful questioning if you've looked at offensive football since 1985, if they can be good enough, they got a good chance to represent the Big Ten in the Big Ten championship, represent the Hawkeyes going to the Big Ten championship game and being a fringe playoff contender if their offense can play like they did. And again, I know it's Illinois State. Illinois State's a very good FCS program. And you saw this past weekend what very good FCS programs can do. North Dakota State took Colorado to the brink. South Dakota State played really well against Oklahoma State. The Cowboys came away with the win, but you know what? It was probably tighter than Mike Gundy wanted it to be. So the FCS, the upper echelon teams, are good. And to perform against a good team like that, Iowa deserves a little bit of credit. Now for some players who had big-time games over the weekend and also deserve to have that mention of their stock is up. Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. Vandy beat Virginia Tech. There were a lot of talk about Virginia Tech being a team that felt like they could compete for the ACC title. You can't beat Vandy. You ain't competing for the ACC title. And Diego Pavia was efficient through the air, ran the ball 26 times, and basically brought them back from the brink to beat Virginia Tech, a team that had a lot of pub around it. Kyle Monangai, the running back at Rutgers, is a name I think you're going to hear a lot because they're going to rely on him. Rutgers is not bad. The knock in the Big Ten for a long time, and I think justifiably so, is that Rutgers is sort of like all the talk about fall weddings recently is like, you can't if you want people to come to your fall wedding, you're ridiculous. And my joke has always been like, okay, if my favorite team is playing Rutgers, yeah, I'll go to your wedding. I think you got to see that game against Rutgers now because they're not going to get their ass kicked by anybody. They're going to be in a lot of games. They could win 8 games. They are one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Big Ten splitting away from divisions because they don't have a guaranteed row of Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State on their schedule any longer. They're a big beneficiary, and Kyle Monangai is going to lead that offense for Rutgers at the running back spot, and he's a name you're going to hear a lot. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska had a really good debut. Really, really, really solid debut. True freshman starting quarterbacks generally make, and I'm sure that Dylan Raiola is going to have growing pains at some point. But that was not in week 1, and I think you have to be really encouraged by that. As a Cornhusker fan, he was efficient, didn't make a bunch of mistakes, played really well. Going back to Thursday night, Cam Rising from Utah had 5 touchdown passes, and the first time he's played since the 2023 Rose Bowl. So it had been 21 months, essentially, since he had put on a uniform and played. 5 touchdowns is a pretty good welcome back for the Utes who have big-time aspirations and are going to need him to play really well. And then the final player is Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona. 10 catches, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. I know it's against New Mexico. I know that. I get it. You put up 10 receptions for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. You're averaging 30 yards a catch. You deserve a pat on the back, some praise, edible arrangement, whatever it takes, because that is a performance from anybody in Division I football. Now, the stock downs. And there are some big stock downs. First of all, Florida. You knew that the game against the U was a big one. Whoever won that game was going to feel significantly better about their prospects in 2024. The U, if they won, hey, we are a playoff team. Florida, if you won, you're looking like, hey, we might not finish 5-7. Because the last 5, and I've been talking about this for a long time, and people just now getting on board, the last 5 for Florida are difficult. And for Billy Napier to survive that stretch, you have to build and stack wins at the start of the season, and they did not do that. In fact, they got whipped from the get-go, both sides of the ball. Their defensive line looked horrendous. Florida is in trouble, and Billy Napier's job prospects are in trouble too. Also, Virginia Tech has to be a stock down. If you think you're going to win the ACC, or this is the year we put it all together and Brent Pry's system is all put in, we're gelled, this is the year we rocket up the ACC standings and get back to kind of Virginia Tech football. You can't lose to Vanderbilt to start the season, because Vanderbilt's over under 2.5 wins, 3.5 wins. And they're looking to make those wins against, Ball State, not against Virginia Tech. And they got out to a 17-0 lead, held on to win in overtime. Virginia Tech stock, 2 more. Oregon had a huge spread and a huge over-under against Idaho, and they struggled with the Vandals. And they struggled with the Vandals while Dylan Gabriel played pretty well. If that's the 3rd best team in the country, I got the chance to bump uglies with Selma Hayek. I'm firmly convinced of that. I thought Oregon was a little overrated to start the season. I didn't think, they deserve to be 20th. 3 felt high. That performance is going to drop them out of the top 5, I have to imagine. You beat Idaho by 10 at home to start the season with a 15th-year starting quarterback. Not a good look. I think they'll turn it around and they'll be still pretty good, and I would still pick them to make the college football playoff. That was not an inspiring week 1 performance. And then the last one is Texas Tech. I'm the biggest champion of a win is a win is a win is a win. But you beat an FCS school 52-51 in overtime, you got some problems. You got issues to fix. Joey McGuire, I thought, was going to be a guy that was going to lead Texas Tech to not newfound heights, because Mike Leach coached there, but they were going to be an 8 or 9 win team, in my opinion. That was my thought when they hired Joey McGuire. It's like, they're going to turn things around and be really good. You can't be beating FCS schools by 1 point in overtime and looking at it anything other than yikes. So that's a look at the Sunday stock report. Whose stock is up, whose stock is down. Also, since it's Sunday, we got to do the Sunday Stiff Arm Trophy update. Every week, I'll tell you who I would vote for to win the Heisman Trophy if the voting ended today. Is that ridiculous? Yes, especially on September 1st. That is a stupid thing to do. So that's why we're doing it. Shedeur Sanders threw for 450 yards, and I think Colorado beat North Dakota State almost solely because Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter were on the field. And I think he's going to get a lot of publicity and notoriety and attention throughout the season. 1, because his dad wants him to be getting a lot of attention and notoriety and publicity throughout the season. But also, he's a very good quarterback. I had mentioned, I think last year maybe, that I didn't think he was a first-round pick. He absolutely is. He's very accurate with the football. Deep balls aren't necessarily his forte, but he can put some sauce on them things. And he is able to get out of the pocket. Now, obviously, I think he needs to work on taking sacks, or avoid taking sacks, maybe more importantly. But he would be my Heisman Trophy winner as of today. I don't believe Tetairoa McMillan is going to see his name on this list all that frequently. But you know what? Week 1 performance, you put 10 receptions, 300 yards, and 4 tutties on the board, I'll put you on the list. And then Utah's Cam Rising. If the Utes get to where they want to be, if they are the program, the team that they think they are in 2024, they need Cam Rising. And if they are that team and program, Cam Rising is naturally going to be included in the Heisman Trophy talk, because Utah will be a top 10 team if they can play up to their potential. And the only way to do that is with Cam Rising. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, the easiest path to being a Heisman Trophy finalist is being the quarterback of the best team in America. Now, I don't think Utah is the best team in America. I think Carson Beck is going to get an invite to New York, barring a ridiculous bottom fallout for UGA. But Cam Rising is going to, I think, be in that conversation for a while. So I got him third on my list. Want to know what you think? Whose stock do you think is up? Whose stock do you think is down? Did I peg somebody wrong in my list today? Want to know what you think in the comments down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode.